Good evening, Dublin. Welcome to my colleagues around the world who are joining us today on the link. I want to also welcome today to the speaker series in Dublin, employees from Google Dublin and from Workday Dublin. And we're also delighted to have some of our old LinkedIn alumni here with us today. So a big round of applause to all of those. So let me first start by talking about the mission of the speaker series. It is really about presenting us with, as members and as employees, with inspiring ideas from innovative thinkers to help us be more productive and successful in what we do at LinkedIn and around the world. Now to go on and talk about Aaron Hurst. We are so delighted to have him here in Dublin today. And not only is he a LinkedIn influencer with 95 posts, 52,000 followers on his LinkedIn. He is a gentleman who really helped LinkedIn build our volunteer marketplace, where he has really helped us using his company, his foundation, which he founded quite a number of years ago, to help us very much, connect the non-profit organizations with the volunteer, human capital that we have on LinkedIn. And not only, has his own foundation, he recently created his own company, of which he is CEO of, imperative.com. I really recommend that you go on to this. It is a technology platform to help each of us come up with our purpose and how, we look at and develop our purpose for our life. To continue on with that same theme, he has written a book, which he's going to talk to us about today, which is about the purpose economy, and how that will become, the fourth global force, and something that he really feels very passionate about. And I think we're all going to be inspired today. So welcome onto stage, a huge global LinkedIn welcome for Aaron Hurst.
Thanks. I've never been called a gentleman before, so thank you. I had to come to Dublin to be called a gentleman, so I appreciate that.
You're a gentleman in all of our eyes,
since
you're here with us today. So, at LinkedIn, we generally like to ask everyone, all of our new employees, anyone as part of our speaker series, we like to ask you, what is not on your LinkedIn profile that you like to tell us about today?
Most of the things that are most important to me aren't on there, but I think the most important is my wife, who I think is actually. Are any of you Irish? So you're probably related to me somehow, because she's Irish and her family, they're in Boston, but I think there's every single Irish family somehow mixed together in my wife. So it's great to see so many brothers and sisters.
Super.
Or I should say in-laws, because they're not actually by blood. Because I'm Jewish, and yeah, it's different, but still.
In-laws. You're part Irish from now on.
Right.
So I'm going to hand over to you to talk about the purpose economy, and we're going to have a session for about 25-30 minutes with Aaron, and then we're going to open up the floor to questions.
Fantastic. Thank you. No, it's wonderful to be here and to connect with everyone. And they asked me special talent that I was supposed to show as well, and I said it's not enough to write a book. And they're like, no, that doesn't cut it. But everything else I came up with was against corporate HR policy. We couldn't think of a single one policy, so I apologize. Later tonight, though, if you guys want to do those, I hear there's good pubs here, so we'll figure it out. So I'm here to talk to you about my third book. It's called The Purpose, and I'm going to talk to you about the sort of broad themes in the book, but I really want to focus in on the question that I think most of us spend a lot of time thinking about, which is, how do we generate purpose in our work? What is purpose and how does it work? So let's see if this works, speaking of. So this is the book. You all have a copy. Thank you. One of the things that we did, I got to keep this, though. All right. Switch it up. Is that better? Yeah. Awesome. So what we did with this book is I wrote the book last summer, and I was done with it, and I was about to publish it, and then I decided, you know what, this shouldn't be my book, it needs to be our book. And I printed 2,000 copies of it and marked them up with questions about how to improve it. Better stories, better examples, better data. And I sent it out to 2,000 people and got back feedback and stories and ideas. The book that was published only is about 20% the book I wrote. The rest is generated through crowdsourcing information and ideas from others. But one of the pieces of feedback that I heard was, why the hell are you writing a book no one reads? Especially in the US, I think. And I struggled with that because I didn't know what to do with that feedback. It's kind of a hard thing to fix. But what I ended up doing is I hired a cartoonist. And you'll see in the book, each section has a cartoon version before it. So if any of you have trouble reading, I just want you to know there are cartoons. And that's also why you'll see in this presentation so many cartoons, including my four-fingered alter ego. So the story of the purpose economy, and I could go on for hours, but I don't have that time, is about fundamentally evolution. We evolved over millions of years from apes to humans, right? It took millions and millions of years. But one of the things that's core to us as human beings is that we're incredibly impatient, right? We don't have much patience for things to change. And we decided we wanted to take things in our own hands and that nature was not helping us move fast enough. And we created the agrarian economy, and we learned how to use the land and animals and others to enable us to live longer, to not be nomadic, to settle down. And then we decided we wanted to be stronger and more efficient. And we created the industrial economy. And we were able to move things, to lift things that as human beings we never would have evolved to do. And then, finally, we said we want to be smarter, we want to access more information, connect with more people, and we created the information economy. And my uncle back in the 70s at Stanford coined the term information economy and wrote his dissertation about this fundamental shift that was happening. And what was interesting to me was that, first of all, noticing that the economies actually evolve. But it also said something really, really profound. Two things, actually. One was that these economies are getting shorter and shorter. The agrarian economy lasted hundreds or thousands of years. Industrial lasted for hundreds of years. The information economy is unlikely to last more than another 10 to 20 years, just based on that pattern. And I'm going to tell you today what I think the next economy is, but I more importantly want to challenge you to just think about the fact that the information economy will not be the last economy in history. It's almost impossible, historically, that the information economy will be the last economy. And the question becomes, what's next? Right? And I'll leave it to all of you to try to figure that out based on reading papers, looking around you, exploring the world. But I'm going to share with you what gave me hints for why I think it's purpose. And that was really Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As I spent 10 years looking at changes that were going on all around me, the best way I could describe this was to think about how Maslow described how we overcome certain fears and then go on to the next one. Basic needs, higher needs, higher needs. And what I saw, and the best way to describe this is that the millennial generation, those born in the 80s and 90s, the majority of them living in more affluent communities, are no longer worried about where they're going to sleep, where they're going to eat. They're not worried about basic needs. The core fear of the millennial professional generation is a fear of a life without meaning. It's a fear of working without meaning, that they will die without meaning or purpose in what they did. And it's changing the way people work. It's changing what they buy. It's changing core economic drivers. And I believe it's why we're seeing the top innovation in every industry that I've studied being around purpose and the people's desire for purpose in their lives. It's changing healthcare, education, finance, retail. They're all changing radically because of this need. It's not just about philanthropy. As Sharon said, I founded an organization called the Taproot Foundation back in 2001 in the Bay Area after working for 5 years in Silicon Valley. And the core idea was that all nonprofits deserve the same marketing, technology, HR as companies like LinkedIn. That organizations that have incredible missions and doing incredible work need access to that human talent that's represented in your staff and in your network. And we had to find a way to create a parallel market to philanthropy, but that's about human capital. It's about skills, and it's about talent. And at first, we'd go out to nonprofits, and I would say, you want a free website? And they'd say, no, thank you. And I was like, what's wrong with you? You should be like praising me and thanking me. Why are you instead kicking me in the butt and showing me the door? And it's because they've been burned so many times by pro bono work that never got finished. So we spent 3 years perfecting the art of pro bono to the point where we had 94% completion on projects. And we scaled to be the largest nonprofit consulting firm in the world. But we realized that was not success because we were only helping so few, and said we need to figure out instead how to make it a marketplace, how to make this something bigger. And we started working with the president. We started working with different companies. We started working with LinkedIn. And by the time I left Taproot, in the U.S. alone, there was a $15 billion market for pro bono services every year to be parallel to the financial capital going to nonprofits. Now, it's not just volunteerism. This is purely pro bono services, the donation of professional talent to nonprofits. But this is the thing I heard over and over again, which caused me to leave Taproot and start Imperative.com. This is what I heard almost always from people doing pro bono work. I find pro bono work so much more rewarding than my paycheck job. And at first I was like, hot damn, I created Disneyland for work, right? This is awesome. Like, people love this. And then I realized, wait a sec, this is Disneyland for work, and everyone has to go home at the end of the day, and we don't spend most of our lives at Disneyland. We spend them at home. And similarly, we don't spend most of our time doing pro bono work. We spend most of our time doing these paycheck jobs. So my new goal as a social entrepreneur is to make all work feel like pro bono work. I want to make sure that we redesign work so it actually works for human beings, not for robots. I want to fundamentally hack work so that it's about purpose and enables people to feel tremendous purpose in the work they do every day, so that we don't need to continue to take supplements in the form of volunteerism and yoga and nap rooms to be able to have jobs that are with purpose. We need to change the core itself, not just add on these little supplements. So what is the meaning of life? I've been asking this as I've gone around the world on the tour, and I've gotten many different answers. And it's something that we have been asking for a long time, right? Back when I was a caveman, I used to stay up late at night sort of staring at the stars, wondering about the meaning of life. Religions are all about this. Philosophers are about this. Oprah Winfrey made a killing on this, right? This is something we've been debating for a very long time. But the good news is, while we don't know the meaning of life, or at least I'm not convinced. Someone yesterday said it was the number 42, which I guess is a reference to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I haven't read. So it may be 42, but I'm not sure. I have to check on that. We now have the science to understand purpose at work. And I just really want to reinforce how important this moment is, because it's much like when we first commercialized the internet. When I first worked in the internet in the mid-90s, when it was first going online, when people still were just trying to figure out, what is this thing capable of? What can we do with technology? What can we do with the internet? We're at that same moment right now with what we understand about the psychology of work. We are opening up a huge floodgates of possibility. We're going to be able to radically change in the next 10 to 20 years what we think of as work. And this is just because of the science that's becoming on board now, that's being published, et cetera. And I want to share that with you to help you understand some of the keys that we're finding about purpose at work and the great research going on. The first thing I have to do, though, is admit that I was working in the nonprofit sector, working in Silicon Valley, and I did that for 15 years, and I was totally wrong about what purpose is. And I got to share with you like the 3 errors I made, because I find that most people have these same 3 myths about purpose that hold them up from actually finding true purpose. And the first one is that purpose and cause are the same thing. Purpose and cause are not the same thing. There are a lot of people out there that have many, many causes in their life and absolutely no purpose. Has anybody ever met anyone like that? Right? They check off all the LinkedIn causes, right? But they still have no purpose. It's as if you check a box, it gives you purpose, right? And there's also a lot of people that I'm sure you know who have tremendous purpose in their work. And if someone said, what's their cause? You'd be like, I have no clue. This person doesn't have any causes. They're not the same thing. Purpose and cause are not the same thing. You can have as many causes as you want and have no purpose, or you can have none and have tremendous purpose. We don't need the mission of an organization. We don't need a cause to give us purpose. The other 2 were equally surprising to me, but made so much sense once I saw the science. The second is that purpose comes as a revelation. That you're struck by lightning and you get tablets and all of a sudden you know your purpose at work, right? And it sounds ridiculous, but most people walk around with this. Not that it's lightning. Maybe it's an article in the newspaper. Maybe it's a trip to Africa you think will suddenly give you a revelation. On Sunday, I was at Oxford talking to about 20 graduate students. And I told them this. And you saw their faces suddenly sort of get a little sad. And I was like, what's up? What's going on? And they said, we realized that the reason we went to graduate school is we thought we'd have a revelation. while we were in graduate school. We didn't know what to do with our lives. We didn't know what was purpose. We thought we'd go to graduate school and somehow we'd have a revelation and come out of graduate school knowing what we want to do, who we are, what our purpose is. I had to break the news to them that is very unlikely to happen. So hopefully they find other value at Oxford. It's a fun campus. I'm sure they'll have fun. But it's something a lot of people walk around thinking they need to find this thing, that it's outside you. And the third is that purpose is a luxury. We have to wait until we've gotten to a certain level of success before we deserve purpose. Or we have to have a certain amount of money before we're allowed to have purpose. And again, this is just not true. People have purpose of the lowest means, have tremendous purpose in their work. It is not tied to affluence. You don't have to earn purpose. It's not like you have to pay your dues before you're allowed to have purpose at work. And I think there's no better evidence than Viktor Frankl, who is one of the most famous authors when it comes to purpose. And he was a slave in a concentration camp in World War II. And he survived because he found purpose every day in his colleagues and the people he was working with. So if your job is worse than being a slave in a concentration camp, we can have a conversation. But I think anyone has a better job than that. It's not a luxury. It's fundamentally not about money. Money does not create purpose. And I would argue most of the wealthy people I know have less purpose than the poorest people I know. So I started to ask myself, I was on this exploration to figure out how to make all work feel like pro bono work. And I said, how is it possible that two women with the exact same job and a cat, one is fully engaged, full of purpose and excited, and the other one is like 70% of the American workforce and is disengaged and checked out. But they have the same job. What's going on? How is that possible? They're doing the exact same work. How could one be so engaged and rich in purpose and the other one not? And then I also wondered, this guy in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, his name is Dr. Pickle, and he sells pickles for a living, and he makes pickles, and that's what he does all day. He makes pickles, sells pickles, and he smells like pickles. He cannot get a date, I'm almost certain. Like, the guy just is like a walking pickle, right? And yet, this dude is so happy, and he is so full of purpose. What the hell is wrong with him? Like, how dare he actually be happy and full of purpose playing with cucumbers and vinegar all day, right? What is actually going on here? So I started looking at the research being done around this, and what I found is that there's this whole way that researchers have looked at how we approach work. What is the fundamental attitude that we bring to work? And it's really answering the question, if somebody asked you, what is the role of work in your life? What would you say? Just think about that for a second. If someone said, what is the role of work in life? So there are three ways that people answer this question. The first is, work is a necessary evil to earn money so that I can have a life outside of work. These people are, as someone actually in your office in California said, they're coin operated, right? These people are coin operated. It's fundamentally, work is about paying the bills. It's about enabling you to have a life outside of work. The second is career, which is fundamentally about ego. And it's about whether or not, it's about how you view your identity in the world and using work to do that. These are the people who do work because they want mommy and daddy to be proud of them. And they want to go back to their college or high school reunion and be able to look people in the face and be like, yeah, I'm awesome. Like, I'm doing something great. Like, that's what's going on. And the third are people who are of calling, which means that they fundamentally see work as something that adds value to the world. And they see purpose, they see that they get purpose from work itself. That work itself is a source of purpose and value add. So it's pretty interesting, right? What's more interesting is that the people who are calling have higher life satisfaction and higher work satisfaction, and on many regards are better employees. So this is not just simply a question of diversity and we're all different and it's lovely and kumbaya. It's actually an issue of fundamentally what's better for us as humans, what's better for us as employers, and what's better for us as a society. The next thing, which is even more interesting, is that in the US, and this hasn't been researched outside the US, the American workforce roughly breaks down: a third of people are coin operated, a third of people are looking for mommy and daddy to be proud of them, and a third of them see work as fundamentally about adding value. It breaks down almost evenly, a third, a third, a third. And then the final piece, which is the most interesting, is that it doesn't really matter what the profession is. A third of doctors say, I work because it pays well. Being a doctor is a reliable income. We'll always need doctors. It's a good way to go. It's fundamentally a way to have steady income and decent income. A third are doctors because mommy and daddy would be proud of their son or daughter for being a doctor, and they're comfortable going to reunions saying, yeah, I'm a doctor. Maybe it's not the President of the United States, but no one's going to say, loser, they're a doctor. And the final is calling, which is that they fundamentally see it as a way of adding value to the world. And they see the act of medicine itself as something that gives them purpose and gives them value. But the same thing's true of executive assistants. A third see it as just a job, a third see it as a career, and a third see it as a calling. Which you can only really draw one conclusion from all of that, which is that it's not really the profession, it's not really the organization. At the end of the day, it's up to each of us to decide whether or not we want to embrace purpose and have a career of purpose. Because if you can switch job after job and career after career and still basically have this approach, it really puts it back on us. The onus is on us to find purpose in our lives. And we need to find ways to support people in doing that. So what is this purpose thing? Purpose is three things. It's relationships. You get purpose from working with each other. You can, I've experimented, find purpose in a dark closet by yourself, but not for very long. It really requires a social setting. It requires people to really get purpose. The second is from doing something greater than yourself. Being able to do something that matters to someone besides just you. And this doesn't have to be curing cancer, world peace. It can simply be helping a colleague open a door. It can be about creating a product that you feel like is making someone's life a little bit easier. It's the little things that are about doing something greater than yourself. And then finally, it's about personal growth and challenge. When we challenge ourselves, when we do things that scare us, when we learn mastery of skills, that gives us a sense of purpose because we're growing. These are the three things that generate purpose for us. So just to reinforce, this will make individuals better well-being. It will help organizations thrive. It will help society thrive. Too often what we do, and this comes out of another comic strip that we did, too often work has the nutrients of a boot. It's like serving a boot for dinner, right? And then we add these things like yoga and nap rooms, and it's like putting a cherry on top of that boot. That bite might taste a little bit better, but it's still a boot. What we need to do is fundamentally work to make all of our work more like a nutritious meal that enables us to thrive and to build the nutrients into the actual work itself. All these little perks, they're nice, but at the end of the day, we need to make work work for us. We need to make all work feel like pro bono work. So how do we do that? How does an organization do that? How does an individual do that? There's really four things that we've identified looking at the research and doing pilots. The first is you need to build self-awareness as an employee. We gain purpose from different things. We've identified 24 different patterns of purpose, and knowing what pattern you are is incredibly important in understanding how to pursue your career, how to pursue your day-to-day. The second is you need to craft your work to fit your purpose. I talk about it as similar to clothes. You can buy clothes off the rack, but better yet, you buy them and you alter them so they actually fit you, and you add a little bit of like pizzazz to make it your own, right? Too often with jobs, we think the job description, which is basically the off-the-rack clothing, is like the final product. And we don't realize that we need to tailor it to actually fit who we are and our purpose. We need to fundamentally make it ours. The third is to connect purpose to the organization. We need to, once we understand our purpose, once we craft it, to start connecting it to our department. We need to start connecting it to the broader organizational mission. It's absolutely vital to make those shifts so it starts to become our own within that ecosystem. And then finally, we need to celebrate and connect people around purpose. Most organizations celebrate the job mentality, we just made more money, or the calling one, we were in the New York Times, right? They don't celebrate impact. They don't celebrate when they help someone do something in their life that really mattered. And that's the thing that really helps fuel that and to build a culture of purpose. A lot of it has to do with what you celebrate. The other piece, which we're experimenting with, is around connecting people around purpose. We tend to connect people around function, gender, race, university, job. Those things are all external and superficial. What we're starting to do is connect people through their purpose type. And we had people who are of the same purpose type, like someone on staff, look in our database, find someone who had the same purpose profile and had a job they thought sucked. They're like, find someone who has the same purpose profile but has a job that you're like, I would never do that. Send them an email and ask them if you can interview them. And what we found was that, one, they became immediate friends. And secondly, they came back saying, that's kind of a cool job. I might think about doing that. Because we tend to look for work advice from people who have a different purpose profile than us, and we get bad advice. We get bad advice from our parents, bad advice from our colleagues, bad advice from different career offices that are focused on function, because we're not giving advice based on purpose. We're giving it based on skills and function, which are much less important and change all the time. So you need to build community, to build networks around purpose, not just the external pieces. I want to give an example of this idea of tailoring your clothes, your job to fit you, called job crafting. And this research, the one that they did that I thought was great, was about orderlies, the people who clean hospital rooms. This is one of the worst jobs out there because you're literally cleaning up body parts, blood, urine, you name it, right? It's dirty as hell, and doctors and nurses are incredibly mean and dehumanizing to these folks. They talk about them as subhuman, literally, and like treat them like furniture. So these people have no right to like their job, right? They have no reason to like their job. They're like Dr. Pickle. They just should not like this. And yet they still found that many of them, again, found tremendous calling and purpose in their work. So how dare they? How did they do that? And what they found was that they said they felt just as important as the doctor or nurse. And they're like, really, how is that possible, right? And they said when the doctors and nurses aren't looking, they often start singing, dancing, and telling jokes to patients, right? Not part of the job description. It's not like part of the orderly job description, like please tell 3 jokes to see whether or not you're capable of cleaning a hospital room, right? It's not part of their job description. They're not tested to dance, but they were doing it anyway. And they were often being far more important to patients around connecting and serving their families when they visited than the doctors and nurses who were too busy doing medical things. And my favorite story is in a long care facility, they actually moved art around so people would have new art to look at while they were stuck in a hospital bed. They were changing the job. They were doing what's called job crafting. And again, if someone can do that with this horrible job, from my point of view, and from most of our points of view, there's no reason why we can't do that with any job out there. And there's 3 core ways that Amy Wisniewski and other scientists have looked at this and figured out they've been doing this. Because they weren't doing this like in a committee where they'd all get together and like, have you tried dancing? No, but singing is great. They don't do that. It just, all these guys were like organically just doing this. And what they found is they were doing 3 things. They were changing the tasks. They still did the tasks that were in the job description, but they added singing. They were changing relationships. They didn't think about patients as people who make a mess that I have to clean up after. They thought about them as patients that they wanted to care for. And they changed perception. They changed fundamentally what they defined as their job. They turned their job into a caring job, not just a functional job. It was about more than what would show up, as you guys say, on the LinkedIn profile as you ask the question, right? They're showing their special talents, and they're showing the things that don't show up there. And those are the things that were making the job worthwhile. So I went and visited a place that I thought would be sure to be void of purpose, an investment bank in New York, right? They all wear dark suits. They're all white. It's like the most like homogeneous, like conforming culture you can imagine, right? And I walked in the door, I opened the door, and you can just feel purpose oozing out of the place. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? This is not supposed to be happening. So I sat down with their CEO, Erica Karp, and I said, you guys have a lot of incredible purpose and culture in here. Like, what am I missing? Did you put drugs in the water? Like, how did you make this happen? This is not supposed to be happening. And her answer was simple, and I wanted to share this with you because I think it shows how it's not just about technology, it's about being human. She asked people, how was your day? She asked her employees, how was your day? And she doesn't say it as a throwaway line like a lot of us do. She says it and actually wants to know the answer. And she says afterwards, if they say, I had a good day, she says, that's not good enough. Tell me what the one moment was today that made it a good day. And as she asks this over 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, she sees patterns emerge. And she starts to switch their job in subtle ways. She starts to reward them in different ways, give them different projects. She's tailoring their clothes for them to make them fit better. And she's doing this for her whole team. She's not using technology. She's not using some performance management system or learning and development platform. She's using humanity and listening and actually acting on what she hears. So to me, if she can do this here, it speaks to how we all need to both do that as managers, how we need to do that for each other, and how we have to do it for ourselves. And a big part of what we're doing on our platform is trying to ask people every day, how was their day? And trying to help them identify those trends in their lives so that they can start tailoring their clothes that they buy so they actually fit them. So I want to leave with you, I believe strongly that the fourth economy, which will emerge as dominant in the next 10 to 20 years, is around purpose. As I said, I see it in every industry. I see it in the fact people are willing to work for less to have purpose in their work. I see it all over the world. And I think there's basically 2 choices people have. You can bust out an umbrella, or you can bust out a surfboard and have a great time. And I'm really encouraging companies and individuals to see this change and to bust out their surfboards. Because I think it's going to be an incredible economy. I think there's an opportunity to really innovate, much like there was in technology 10 or 20 years ago, to really make things possible that no one ever thought was possible. And to me, that's what entrepreneurship's all about. It's about making a difference in people's lives. It's not about making money. It's not about proving something's possible. It's about seeing a need in the world that truly matters and making a difference. And we're at a point now where that's economically viable. It's not just charitable. And that's why I'm so excited about how work is going to change in the next 10 to 20 years. And it's going to look radically different when my kids who are 6 and 8 graduate from college. It's going to look radically different than anything we see today. We're going to see 40% of the workforce freelance. We're going to see people thinking very differently about work. And I hope that one of the things we're going to help influence is to stop people seeing, when they're looking at problems at work, that the grass is always greener on the other side. We're constantly pushed to find new jobs. When you have a problem, switch to another job. The average person now switches jobs every 2 years. It's incredibly dysfunctional. We need to stop always feeling like the grass is greener on the other side and instead realize the grass is greenest where we fertilize it. Right? We need to fertilize the grass we're in and not always look for something else. And a mentor shared that quote with me, and I was like, that is exactly right. We as a society constantly are looking for the next best thing. We always think the next thing is going to be better. But the problem is we are always part of that. It's not like we're going to something and we're not part of that equation. So unless we address it within ourselves, the purpose within ourselves, how we go about this, we're just replicating the same problem over and over again. And if you work from 20 to, say, 70, which is probably the most likely now, and you switch jobs every 2 years, that's 25 jobs, which is probably good news from a LinkedIn job posting point of view. But from a humanities standpoint, that is not good news for organizations. It's not good for our health. It's not good for social capital. We need to find a way to make work work for people. And that's why I'm so dedicated to making all work feel like pro bono work. And with that, I know I was supposed to announce this earlier, but I'd love to open this up for discussion so that we can hear from those of you here in Dublin, as well as those all around the world. I think you guys now have an office on Pluto. Is that right? I think so, yeah. There was a job posting there, and like, we got to get there. We got to make sure we've got a place in the Pluto economy. So, to anybody, I think we've got a microphone here if anybody is brave enough to ask the first question. And you can also remotely, if you're in another office, type in the question, and someone here will do their best job of impersonating your accent and questions.
So thank you, Aaron. I suppose my first question is, you mentioned at the beginning you sent your book out to crowdsource from did you find any company or a group of companies or types of companies? You mentioned an investment bank there that really are living this purpose economy? Yeah,
I think there's moments. I mean, what I've seen more is there's departments that have a great leader that's doing that. More than you see like a whole bigger company doing it. One of the organizations I find, and it's written about a lot in the book, is Mozilla. I think Mozilla is fascinating in terms of how they operate because they're a nonprofit and for-profit together. And most of their work's done by volunteers, not by paid staff. And they do things like have their staff retreats, and they invite the volunteers to them. And they don't treat them as any different. And when they have professional development, they invite the volunteers and pay for them to do professional development. And when they have big decisions they have to make, they open it up to employees and volunteers to work through those. I think this is the future of leadership. It's much more like community organizing. And it's also, we're seeing, there's very little divide now between employee, customer, et cetera. I think about myself. I am currently paid $0 by LinkedIn, but I make LinkedIn money. I'm an influencer. I'm creating impressions on your site. So am I an employee? Am I a volunteer? Am I a customer? Like, who am I to you? Right? So then the question becomes, how do you manage an organization like LinkedIn or YouTube where most of your employees aren't paid? Or the Huffington Post, right? What does that mean? And this is where a lot of organizations are going. And it changes all of how we think about management. Because it can no longer be top down. Because I can quit being an influencer any moment. It takes a very different kind of culture and community to lead that. So that's one example. There's some others in the book through different industries, but I think that's a really inspiring one. Yep.
Thank you, Aaron. That was great. So my question is in relation to here at LinkedIn as employees, we're actually really privileged because we're empowered to give back, to create social impact through our LinkedIn for Good program.
Absolutely.
And I'm just wondering, in your experience working with other organizations, do you ever receive any negativity or negative feedback from either employees or organizations to do pro bono?
Sure. I mean, I think there are different components. I think there's volunteerism, philanthropy, pro bono. They're different things, right? And I've loved working with Meg and her team. They're amazing. And Reed has been such a great advocate for Taproot and Funder and of this work. So I'm so proud of the work we've done here with LinkedIn. What I've heard, and I used to joke about this, so like I would go to Time Warner, because we worked with dozens and dozens of companies, consulting them on how to do pro bono. And they'd say, well, we have a lot of employees who, like, the last thing they want to do when they're out of work is do more work. They don't want to do pro bono work, right? And I would say, they would say, what's your advice? And I would cheekingly say, fire them. Because basically it shows they don't love what they do for a living, right? Which is obviously overstating that. It sort of shows they're not in that calling category, right? They're not truly loving the craft of what they do. But the biggest resistance has been around that. It's people wanting to supplement with something very different instead of addressing finding the passion within people for their work. That's been the biggest one. I mean, overall, it's Disneyland. I mean, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want it. From a purpose standpoint, you can't get any better than pro bono work. You're building relationships, working with your colleagues that share values. You're making an impact greater than yourself, and you're growing like crazy because you're having to work in a different environment with a different challenge. So there's almost nothing you can do in the world that's more rich in purpose than pro bono work. So I think once people taste it, it often just sticks in a big way. And you see that here with a lot of what you guys have done.
Yeah. Thank you. Agreed.
Yeah.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey, Jeff.
Good to talk to you. Seeing a lot of people, not at LinkedIn, but some at LinkedIn in different industries, working a lot and potentially burning themselves out.
Yep.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts on what really causes burnout and whether it's a lack of purpose with the work, if it's engagement, if it's resilience, and in your research, if you saw what the main drivers were there.
Yep. So I first of all always want to caveat, 90% of this research is not my research. It's research by actual academics. I'm just taking credit for it. But I want to make sure just to acknowledge them because I think it's really important. We're a company and I'm a writer. But that said, I think it's a complicated question, right, around burnout. And the whole idea of work-life balance is also a really complicated question. I think there's a lot of people right now, especially that I know in the U.S., who have to work 3 jobs to make enough of a living to be able to survive. And I think for them, there's a real fundamental structural problem in our world when jobs don't pay enough where you can work 50 hours a week and be able to afford food for your family. I think beyond that, within this rarefied existence in which all of us in this room sit, it's a different issue. And I think burnout has a lot of different components to it. I think part of it is not managing your energy and understanding what generates energy for you, which is connected to purpose, but it's not fully the same thing. I think another is like cultures where just showing your face and being there is what is valued. And there's just a sense of like competition on who works the hardest instead of on results, which I think is a big part of it. I think a lot of it's a lack of variety of tasks. I think a lot of people get burned out doing the same thing over and over again, no matter how great that thing is. Just doing too much of it and not mixing it up can be an incredible burnout. But I hear stories all the time at startups about people who literally die. Members of staff dying just from complete exhaustion because we just assume that it's about working so hard and not putting a normal pace to it. So I think it's a very real issue. But I also think people with calling don't draw such a big line between work and life. There's more fluidity there because it's more human. And that's why, in part, we're doing a big campaign this fall, which I hope you guys can be part of, which is Bring Yourself to Work Day. Where people will be actually encouraged to be human at work. And we're working with companies to create this campaign where there'll be one day a year you're allowed to be human. And we've had a lot of corporate interest in this, so I think that's a big part of it.
Thank you, and I'd encourage you and others to read Mike Gamson's post on work-life harmony.
As
you were talking, you hit a few of those. So thank you.
That's a good one. Hey.
Thank you for the opportunity. Quick question. From what I saw in your presentation and what I heard, you made me think a little bit about what's going on today. Probably we're getting out of a recession and back on track, let's say, in economic terms.
Yep.
And I was thinking how the purpose economy would fit in this variance, because I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe we go back to a big recession. Maybe we go to an economic growth and thinking on Maslow's pyramid. Safety, maybe I'm also a recent father, and economy makes a different view for me these days. So how
I think there's certainly times where we have to work and we're like, don't love what we're doing at that moment and we have to work because of money. I think that's different than fundamentally like what role you see long-term of work in your life. Recessions, I mean, I've now been through 2 major ups and downs. We had the dot-com bubble burst, then we've had this one. These things are going to happen. Like anyone who's lived long enough, you talk to someone who's like 80 or 90, or my grandmother before she died, it's like, these things just come up and down. The economy is a bigger trend, and it goes along with that and obviously affects it. But this prolonged recession, I think, is the longest in history. I mean, it's an incredible challenge for so many people. And one of the things they find is that people, when they are moving around all the time, they have no certainty in their life, and they see chaos everywhere. which is what we see so much in society now is chaos. People moving jobs. We see people having to address environmental issues. You see terrorism, like all these things that build all this sense of chaos. What people tend to do is they need to look for something to ground their life, to give them a foundation, and they need to find a sense of meaning and purpose, which is also why you see such growth in religion at the same time, because there's so many people looking for something. That's why there's such growth in yoga. Like people are looking for something to give them something foundational amidst chaos. So I think the more chaos there is, it'll actually fuel the purpose economy, not hurt it.
Thank you.
That's my long answer. I apologize.
Thank you.
It's hard when you're passionate about this stuff. Yeah.
Hi. I thought it was really interesting the example you had of someone who was redesigning their job to make it, purposeful for them personally.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, because you said there's different types of purposes.
Yeah.
If you think that, for every kind of job that is out there, there is a theoretical fit from certain people for them to make it their own. Okay. Because like some jobs, it's really hard for me to imagine that someone actually would like to do it. Also because it's, I don't know, exhausting on a day-to-day basis or something. So do you feel that there's just a mismatch, or do you feel that companies have to change the way they offer jobs?
So I think a mix, right? So I think one is there are certain jobs that are better aligned with people. Like a doctor in theory is a high-purpose job. Like if someone said, do doctors have purpose? You generally say yes. I would not get much purpose from being a doctor. It's not my style. That's part of what comes out of my profile around purpose, right? So the way I like to think about it, though, is that there's the equivalent of minimum wage of purpose for every job. Like there's a baseline you can have, no matter how terrible your job is, around the relationships with people, around some of these components. So you can find purpose in any job. But there's a big difference between people who have minimum wage purpose and are like millionaires with purpose. And obviously I'm not talking about actual currency. I'm talking about the amount of purpose they get. And I think that's where that difference comes in, that there are certain jobs and certain people where there's an alignment where you can suddenly become, you can go public in purpose. Like you can have that like big windfall because there's such great alignment. So I think it's important to acknowledge purpose is possible in any job, but to also realize with the right fit in the right profession, the right organization, with the right person, that you have the opportunity to create incredible purpose wealth. And I think that's a lot of what we need to do to help people find the right work and to help organizations is find opportunities for people to become purpose millionaires instead of minimum wage.
Very interesting concept. Thank you.
Sir?
Thank you, Aaron. This was very inspiring, and I agree with you when you talk about purpose economy being the fourth big economy. So I have a personal dilemma here, and I wanted to hear your opinions.
We're ready for therapy, everybody? Here we go.
So, as you can see here, we have a lot of nationalities here in Dublin.
Yeah,
I'm
awesome.
Turkish myself. So
Turkish, you said?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So when I think about the pro bono that I want to do, I want to contribute. I am living in Dublin. There are so many causes in Dublin that I can contribute, but at the same time, I'm thinking about home, like how can I help the organizations back home? So that creates a dilemma, and how do I prioritize? Do you think it's going to be a problem with the millennials as well when we're moving forward with the purpose economy?
So I think the first place to find purpose is in the work you're doing today and thinking about how can you maximize purpose for your clients, for the people on your team. There's so much opportunity without even like thinking about the broader Dublin community, thinking about Turkey, et cetera. I think we have so much opportunity to first optimize with the people that we spend our time with and with our families. There's so much opportunity there as well. And then I think it has a lot to do with your own personal purpose pattern and whether or not like there's a high social aspect to it. Because if there's a high social aspect, having people locally that you're helping and that you're engaged with in the Dublin community will do a lot for you to be able to provide that value. Whereas, and it depends on communication, et cetera, doing stuff more remotely may not give you that same sense of purpose. But it's so unique to each person, which is why it's hard without sort of doing a purpose profile with you to really know what the right answer there is, except for to say they're all right. I don't think, the only wrong answer is to sort of get paralyzed by decision. There's so much need in this world. And too often, there was this trend for a while of micro-volunteering. I don't know if any of you saw that, where you could like pull out your app and like, oh, there's somebody in Turkey who needs help, right? And you'd see people literally like looking for this in line, and there'd be like trash all around them on the ground. And you're like, we need to sometimes put technology away and actually just look around us at the people we're working with, the trash on the street, and like, you don't need permission to serve. Just do it. So I would just say, doesn't matter. Like, just do it and do it. I think usually in the best proximity to yourself to start with, and then go from there. That's my generic advice, not knowing more than that you're a LinkedIn employee living in Dublin from Turkey who is a male. I assume. I don't want to make too many assumptions, but The facial hair was sort of a giveaway, but but you know, who knows? But anyway.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'll keep you posted. I'll just
Love it. Please keep us all posted.
Hi, Aaron. My name's Radina, and I'm part of the EMEA talent team for LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Obviously, our mission is really to shape up the future of LinkedIn, and we definitely want to hire people with purpose. What would your advice be to do that?
So how do you hire people with purpose? And I think this is a question I don't like to answer yet, because the research is still so new, and I feel like it'd be really easy for us to start doing criteria and evaluating people based on this. And I'm not sure the science is strong enough yet. I think it will be within a couple of years to start looking at that. But I think we could really do a lot of harm by doing this too early. I would more just look to see whether or not people are passionate about the craft of what they do. And whether or not they're passionate about the mission of what LinkedIn does. And sort of get a sense for whether or not they're just, if you go through their resume and talk through it, tell them why, ask why they were doing things and what they got out of it, and sort of try to get a sense for, was it about fundamentally just surviving and making money? Was it about fundamentally status and needing promotions, and the way they talk about their resume as a series of promotions? Or do they talk about the impact they had? And I think you can tell a lot just by listening to someone talk through their resume. But again, I think it's too early to do this on a large scale. My hope is eventually this will become a driving force, and we'll actually start wanting to do that, which will create more pressure on our educational institutions to prepare people for careers of purpose. So there's more of that. So stay tuned, I guess, is the answer.
Super, thanks.
Yeah. Do we have a remote question?
We have a remote question.
Ladies and gentlemen, a remote question.
I'm not doing the accent. This is from Ariel Eckstein in our London office.
Awesome.
What are the initial objections you get from people or organizations when you first discuss becoming a purpose-driven company? And how have you helped them overcome them?
So a couple things. I started Imperative in July. We just launched 6 months ago, so I can't say based on the 600 companies we worked with so far. A lot of it's just based on initial conversations and the pilots we're doing. I think some people still hold those myths as true, and they think it's about, oh, suddenly I help people find purpose, they're all going to quit, right? Because they think that it fundamentally has to do with finding a cause. It's not about the work they do. So I hate to overcome that fear is probably the biggest one. And the sense of losing control. But what I'm finding is, just like any adoption curve, you think about the technology adoption curve, there's certain companies and individuals that are more ready for this change, and they're doing it, and they're willing to take those risks because they're comfortable with it. And you see a lot of these companies. And there's others that are going to do it in 20 years. And there's others that will go bankrupt because they never do. Just like the ones that, early on you saw with technology, a lot of companies were like, well, we'll put up a website, right? And no one in the company knew how to do it. They just find a vendor, they put up a website. They never integrated technology into who they were. So you see a lot of this happening now, where companies are going out and bringing consultants to do things around purpose and creating yoga and nap rooms and all that stuff. But the company's not changing. I think it's the ones that are actually integrating it that you're seeing the real difference in. So, yeah. And while we're doing a technical change here, I want to also just point out one thing that I love about LinkedIn, is that it used to be a lot of companies would bring authors in. And these days, very, very few companies do. And I think it's so important to bring in divergent points of view and people who've been thinking about stuff, whether they're right or wrong, but just to get your mind going. And it used to literally be 10 years ago, it was a common practice. And now there's just a handful of companies that do it. So thank you guys for doing that. I hope you continue to do it. Not for myself, because I've already done my 15 minutes of fame. But I just think it's so important to get those ideas out there. So, yeah.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you very much for today.
Of course.
As I've been waiting here, I've thought my question through, and it's actually more become maybe a suggestion for an influencer post. We're all really privileged to be in jobs where we can think about how we can apply our passions and craft them to ourselves. What would you say to people who don't have jobs at the moment?
So for the people looking for jobs, how do they... Yeah, so I think there's two different pieces to this. I think one is how to find purpose in the experience of looking for a job itself. I remember one brief point after I left Silicon Valley, and I was sort of looking at some jobs and just doing informational interviewing. It was one of the most fun times I ever had, just because it was so much fun to just meet people of different backgrounds and hear what they're doing and learn about what they do and just understanding how radically different cultures are. So one is just find purpose in the process of looking for work itself. And I suspect in doing that, you're much more likely to get that job because you're curious, you're passionate, and you're not necessarily just there to get a job, you're there to learn. And it's going to be much more compelling to that person. The second one is to really think about the moments in your last jobs Those moments like Erica asked for. Not the big wins. Like when I think back about Taproot and all the success we had, the big wins I barely remember. It's like key relationships, moments, meals, projects that I remember. Those are the things that stick with me. And to think about those things in your last few jobs and just jot them down and look for patterns. And then when you go into an interview and someone asks you, what are you all about? What are you looking for? You say, well, these are the things that I really value. I really value being able to have FaceTime with people where we can really talk through things. I really value being able to have discussions where we really challenge something and not just accept something as a status quo. I really like it when I have a challenge that I don't know I can do, and it inspires me to like do things I never thought were possible. Like you tell those stories, and suddenly someone knows not what you look like as a LinkedIn profile, they know what you look like as a human being. And I think that's the key thing if you're out of work, is to find those human moments and learn how to share those and have confidence in them. And to then be able to say no to a job, potentially, if that's not going to be possible. But when you have that confidence, you're so much more attractive. It's just like dating. That's why even probably Dr. Pickle, despite his smell, probably gets great dates because he loves what he does and can talk pickles ad nauseum. So that would be my general advice / a LinkedIn post that I could write.
I think if we can get a transcript of that, you just saved yourself 30 minutes next week.
Can you find the right photo for it? That's always the hardest part.
So, hi, Aaron. I guess my question is, you have your book and you're going around obviously doing, speeches like this and telling everybody about the purpose economy and the mission and the input that everybody's had in it. You talk about purpose profiles. So I guess what's next? What's next for Imperative.com or Aaron or the purpose economy?
What's next for me is I've been on a 6-city, 6-day tour. And tomorrow morning I get to go swimming with my kids back in New York. But and I'm very excited about that. But beyond that, I think we're entrepreneurial, and I like to think about there's sort of several different kinds of entrepreneurs. There's entrepreneurs that think about a product or a service and a gap in the market and how to fill it. They're basically the people who plug holes and create opportunity by plugging holes. I've always been much more of a market maker. I'm much more interested not in how to create a great product or a great service, but fundamentally, how do you move the needle? How do you change a market? That's what I did at Taproot, and that's what you'll see in the last section of the book is sort of my research about the only 5 ways that you can actually create change and move a market and how to apply that to an innovation curve. So we've got a lot of bets going right now. I mean, one is really around working with individuals and companies to reframe how we think about work, how we manage jobs, how we think about all this. The second one is that we really believe that Silicon Valley is not going to be the hub of this new economy. Just like Detroit is not the hub of the information economy. They tend to change. And we believe another city or country will become the Silicon Valley of this new economy. And we're working with mayors and corporate leaders and civic leaders to challenge them to say, how can your city or country become this purpose economy capital? How can you, instead of trying to compete with Silicon Valley, leapfrog it and become a city that's the emblem of purpose and is generating both economic and social gain? So we're doing a big campaign and working with cities around radically changing their DNA to like maximize purpose and to be that. We've also got a research agenda that we're working on and trying to move that forward to sort of advance this and help support all these academics by giving them access to better data. We're also planning like a whole series of other books on different components, like how do you invest in the purpose economy? What does leadership look like in the purpose economy, et cetera, so we can get those conversations. We're doing a conference on investment, in fact, in Utah this fall around how do you invest in this economy. We're doing a meeting of all the key thought leaders around work with purpose in New York City in October, so we can start developing a whole platform around this. So it's a wide range, and we're also thinking about how do we help schools, because we know that adolescence is when you get this imprinted. How can we change curriculum in universities around this? So we've got a lot of sort of projects going on, because ultimately we're not about making money, even though we think we will. We're not about creating a product or service, because those come and die. We're about fundamentally making a change so that all work feels like pro bono work. So that's sort of what I'm tirelessly doing, and it's honestly hard pitching this to a lot of investors, because they're used to hearing, like, what's the app that you're creating? Right? And they have this like whole PowerPoint presentation format for all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not interested in all that. We're interested in how do we make all work feel like pro bono work. And we know these are the things that are going to help make it happen. And we're looking for investors who really want to change the world and who want to change work, not just make money. So it's been an interesting path.
That's great. Thanks.
Yep.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey.
I was just wondering, now we've spoken about finding purpose, and I know that we're all going to leave here really inspired and full of purpose.
That guy there is not actually.
you know, we all have a little bit more zest, I suppose, to go back to our jobs now. But what about those days when it's a little bit tougher, or there's a bit more business pressure and business needs? And how do you have any advice for management and also individual contributors as to maintaining their purpose and
So it's okay to have bad days, and I guess part of it's giving yourself the self-love to know there's the next day and not letting it like spiral into drama. I went through an exercise that I just want to quickly describe, which was I have a lot of very successful social entrepreneurs in my family that have done a tremendous amount. Like my grandfather wrote the blueprint for the Peace Corps and was the CEO of the Aspen Institute. My grandfather was on the other side is a very famous cardiologist. Like, they've done a lot of great work. And for a while I struggled with, what does success mean for me? Like, when will it be enough? And I started asking the question, what would be the ultimate job? Like, what could be the best success? And I was like, well, as an American, how about President of the United States? And then I was like, that job would suck. I don't want that job. And then I thought about like the next 5 tiers down. I'm like, none of those jobs would be attractive. I don't want any of them. And then I realized every success I've had, the next day, all I ever wanted, I was like, yeah, that's awesome. But like, what's next? So I was constantly looking for what's next. And then I realized that the things that actually brought me happiness and purpose were like little tiny things. They were about meetings. They were about, I love to draw and like doing drawings. It was about talking through issues. Like, those are the things I cared about. That was success. So for those like bad days, I think it's about remembering the little things that make you happy and stopping what you're doing and doing them. So for example, I was talking at a big insurance company and someone said, I love to just go for a walk outside, and it like resets me. So it's like, go for a walk outside, go around the block. Sometimes it's they just need to be able to like talk to a friend or do something. Do one of those things and reset. Or just think back to the little things that you enjoy doing and just do one for 5 minutes. Success is not about these achievements. Those achievements are shallow. It's about fundamentally the things that bring you joy and happiness. And I think it's just remembering those even on a bad day. Yeah. Uh-oh. Sheena attack me?
So, Aaron, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for... I was going to thank you for 3 things specifically. 1, taking the time to come to Dublin. 2, taking the time to answer all of our questions so thoughtfully. And 3 is exactly what you're doing, the purpose economy, shaping a marketplace. It's something we live and breathe in a different marketplace on a daily basis, and it's something we all aspire to do and be, and you know, so anything we can do to help you, in regard to imperative.com, Taproot, etc., let us know.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask for one? I have one request.
Of course.
So the thing that sucked about this trip is I literally had 1 day in every city, and I've never been to Dublin before. So I plan to come back, but I need a LinkedIn tour of Dublin. Can I have that if I come back?
Absolutely.
All right.
I
want to get to it. It seems like an awesome city, but I'm like only seeing the hotel in this room, and I could probably be in Sunnyvale. So
don't worry,
it's a beautiful room. I don't mean to say like you guys are amazing, but
don't worry, 500 of us will bring you on a tour of Dublin.
Fabulous.
No problem. So before you have your tour of Dublin, the purpose of this Irish drum is to provide the beat to a band. So you may be able to bring this back to your wife and our Irish heritage, and to you. This is the beat to the purpose economy.
I love it.
Thank you. We'll give you the entire wrist action outside. So Aaron is going to stay with us, answer all our questions, have a drink with us, and to all our colleagues globally and those on the stream, we say thank you very much and good evening.
And work with purpose.